Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Phil Svitek, and joined alongside Martin Zaharinov, who I haven't seen for quite a while. We go back to the Emerson College days, and we're here to talk The Matrix Resurrections. So it's going to be spoiler filled. Know that right off the bat. We assume at this point you've seen the movie, but let's kind of start slowly into this rabbit hole. Martin, overall thoughts on this movie, going into it, after seeing it, all that stuff.
So overall, I expected to hate the movie. I love the original trilogy so much. I've seen the first movie I've seen probably 20 times. I've seen the other movies. I don't love them as much as I love the first one. But the first movie when it came out in 99, I mean, yeah, I was a kid, but even I understood how groundbreaking and just incredible it was. And it blew me away. I think I saw it in theaters like 5 times in the first week. Like I went every single day. So to rehash that, I was just expecting like a total Hollywood botched, crapshoot. So thankfully, I didn't hate it. I also didn't love it. I thought parts of it worked really well, and there are other parts that I understood. I understood why they did it, but overall, I was happier walking out of the theater than I thought I would be.
Yeah. Yeah. Same for me. I mean, I think there's, if I had to sum it up, I think if the action scenes were just a little bit better, then I think I would have truly loved it. But I did appreciate what it had to say. There is part of me, I'm curious from your perspective, like, because I didn't really know much going to, of course I saw the trailers, but the idea, like when it was all like a video game, right? And, Neo's going through that aspect of it. There was a part of me of like, we're not really going to do this, right? Like, it's not just going to be a video. Cause I was ready to like, just fucking throw something. I'm always going through your mind is like, they introduced that bit.
Oh, that's so interesting. See, I love that part. To me, like I loved the first act the most. And I thought the third act was the weakest. I love the first act because they kind of like in a way broke the fourth wall and they basically told you like, hey, they told us this is happening with or without us. So here we are. Right. And I was like, okay, that makes sense then. Like I would much prefer to have Lana in charge of this if this was going to happen either way than have anybody else involved. And I don't know how familiar you are with the video games, but they did actually have like some of that is real because there are a couple of Matrix video games out there, like The Path of Neo, and then there was like an overall Matrix game that came out like many years ago. So there's a huge fan base online of gamers, and some of what's in the movie is actually like the filmmakers Lana Wachowskis, they wanted to involve the video game community and kind of like let them have like a little bit of a say in like which way the story was headed, which is why video games were such a big part of this movie. That's my understanding. So I personally like that. I didn't think that it was going to head towards like, the world being a video game, but that is also like one interpretation, even of the original Matrix is like what, we're in a simulation, which essentially like could be a video game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's not that I hated it. It was like, it made me work for it. Right. And the as far as the video games, like I did play Enter the Matrix. That one was a great one. I didn't play Path of Neo. And I do know with the Matrix Online, like the big storyline that happened there was that Morpheus died. And so like I know like the lore in that sense. But I just never played those ones.
Got it.
They were a little bit beyond me. But yeah, I mean, that's it. I appreciated it. I was just, I wondered ultimately like how long they would keep that thread of like, was this going to be the truth that he's just a video game programmer, or like, is he actually in the Matrix? Like I was literally, I guess I felt what Neo felt in those moments,
Yeah, no, for sure. I do love, I do love how much they incorporated. Okay, here. I like the part that I really do like about this movie is that I think it stayed true to the world of the Matrix. I think it did a really good job, but updated it for like a 2021 audience. It updated it in the modern world, but it still felt like the same world. It still felt like the same Matrix. Like, I think, there's only a finite amount of stories that you can tell. And the Matrix was a very original story when it came out. And, every story out there has been told. So I think half the battle is of any successful franchise or movie is to create a rich world that people can buy into and believe. And I think the original trilogy did an incredible job of creating this world that, all of us fell in love with and that felt like true to our existence. And there's just so many themes in there, right? And as you know, the Wachowskis are both came out as transgender, and there's that theme, and there's the theme of like questioning your reality or your existence or your purpose in life, yada yada yada. And they brought all those back, but also like added the new themes of like questioning capitalism and our current democracy and our current like political system, and updated it for today's world in a way that I felt stayed very true to the original trilogy. So I liked the update. I love the new characters. I love the world that they built, where they talk about how like after the war, like the machines went to war and there's all these sentients that like then join the humans. Like, I love the world. I was like, okay, this is like a cool, rich world. I just don't like that it became like a Hollywood ending in the third act.
Fair enough. Well, we'll definitely talk about that. Let's start because like a big juxtaposition certainly is in the second movie of The Architect, which that seems like the most like over people's head scene in Hollywood history, one might say. And then so I like the switch to The Analyst, who's a lot more humane, if you will. Mm-hmm. But it also works. It's not just like a dichotomy of that. As you're talking about, it is this idea. It is modernized, right? Where that was like, hey, let's create a world where people just gravitate towards suffering, right? And here it's like people don't really give a shit. They just want to be entertained mindlessly in their own little world, and they don't care what it is. And so that that's why The Analyst works in that way. And I thought that was an interesting update, both naturally as well as like a commentary about the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you know why they switched it to The Analyst from The Architect? That always, like, I was like, when they said analyst, I was like, wait, so is that a different person now? Like, I was just confused.
I mean, as far as I understand it, so basically, like the Architect had his version of it. It's basically like a rival company coming in and be like, I have a better way to do this, and they gave The Analyst the contract essentially. Like, I mean, I'm really dumbing it down. But I think like that's my interpretation of it, especially is like, because the idea was they were just losing quote unquote crops, right? Humans, as after the peace was made, there weren't enough batteries to power all the machines, hence the Civil War. And so The Analyst comes in of like, hey, I have a solution to keep them just mindlessly going, and they'll continue to be batteries.
It's like Don't Look Up. It's just entertainment, and you tell people like, hey, none of this is real. They're like, I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm having fun. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Don't Look Up, the Netflix movie. And it's funny, like it's a satire about climate change. And it's funny because like even the write-ups about that are more specifically about Adam McKay and Will Ferrell versus what the hell the movie actually says.
Yeah.
Which just feeds into it. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I'm curious, you mentioned the ending. Why didn't you like it's a Hollywood end, like, because they play to the idea. I mean, it's basically the ending of the first one, except instead of Neo just flying, you have Neo and Trinity, and instead of Rage Against the Machines wake up, you have this cover, which I liked. But it's so different. So I'm curious, like, why that didn't resonate with you, because I have my thoughts on it.
It felt rushed to me. Right. To me, it was like, if you're going to reboot this, and I was reading an article that said that they don't have any plans for further movies. So I was like, okay, if you were going to make one all-encompassing movie, why did you have to go and make it basically so open to have sequels and prequels? Basically, it ended the same way as the first movie did. And, as soon as it ended, I was like, oh my God, they're going to make a second and a third. And then I go and read an article that there's no plans to do that. So then I was like, wait a minute. It just felt rushed to me. The whole storyline of like saving Trinity, it felt like the relationship between Neo and Mr. Smith. I mean, like that was the focal point of, the good versus the evil, like the two of them just coming together. That was basically the whole arc of the original trilogy. And here it just kind of like, they rushed through it. Like you're talking about the action scenes. Yeah, they had the one cool moment when the analyst first went into slow motion and then he took the bullet off of like killing Trinity. That I thought was the cool action scene of the movie. But then everything that happened after that just felt like this Hollywood, like with Sati, like, okay, we have this plan. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go in, and then it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And then we're going to get Trinity, you know, and she's like, you know, it's the fast Hollywood cutting. They're just going in. There's the plan. There's just like some milky action that's not that good. And then Mr. Smith comes out of nowhere to save the day and was like, this is where our alliance ends. And it's just kind of like, what? And now it's over? We just won? We did it? Like, it was after 60 years and like after the like pain and turmoil of the first 3 movies, it's just like, oh, look at us. We're like doing great now. Yeah. That bugged me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, when I could see that. For me, at least why it worked initially was because I was looking at it more of the commentary, right? Where the analyst is basically not just Warner Brothers, but every studio system in a way, or just system of entertainment, because you can apply it to music, whatever. And Neo and Trinity are basically like, no, we're gonna just go and create original art. Like, stop with this bullshit of remakes, reboots, sequels, and so like I like that aspect of it. Like, that's what spoke to me and why it resonated. But I do. It's interesting. Like, I'm curious from your perspective, because like the Wachowskis built this incredible sandbox to play in, right? You know, you can look at it like no different than George Lucas created Star Wars. It's just this incredible sandbox, and at a certain point, like, it's both a blessing and a curse, because people want to play in that sandbox, you know, and people want to see more of that. So, I don't know. It's something like I would love to get to that point as an artist, you know, but then I don't know, would I be like unwilling to waver any sort of control because I built this sandbox? But I think you kind of, I don't know, where I'm sort of teetering towards is you kind of have to, like, that's just, again, the blessing and the curse, and you just have to live with that.
Yeah, and I think it comes with what I was saying earlier. There's only a finite amount of story, so when you build a world, you kind of have to be open to having to go back and revisit that world. But if you have a rich world that people love and that people believe, which I think the Matrix does, and I do think this updated Matrix also does, and it stays true, then you have that ability to go in there and play and mold and change, you know, and update without without losing your audience. I guess maybe my biggest gripe with it is that I wanted more of the world.
Yeah.
Because I loved how they incorporated, at first, at the very beginning, where they were like showing flashbacks of the first movie, I was like, oh no, is this going to be just one of those, let's just pay tribute to the first movie throughout the whole time and then have no originality. But it wasn't. They did it in such a smart way, where it was Neo's memories playing all around him, so they could bring him back and reel him in. So then I was like, oh, that's okay. That's cool. I buy that. I love the scene where they had the projector going with Morpheus. I was digging all that. And then when he finally woke in the new world in IO, and they told him the background and the story and everything that happened, I was like, okay, I dig this. This is cool. Like, this world is cool. I buy this world. I want to see more of it. So to me, it almost felt like if you're going to reboot this trilogy and make a new trilogy, you have to spend more time building that world. And I would have broken this up into, like, your first movie is, you know, basically busting Neo out. Your second movie is setting up the conflict with the analyst. And now Agent Smith, who is free, and busting Trinity out. And then in your third movie, you have the big showdown between the 3 forces.
Yeah.
That's what I would have done. And they kind of tried to be like Hollywood, flashy explosions. They fly away together at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, 2.5 hours now is kind of standard. So it's not, it seems long, but it's not that long. And it is interesting, like, you know, when you kind of consider it with the comics and everything, Animatrix and so forth, they did allow people to really play in that sandbox in those initial days, you know? So like, my biggest thing, like, you know, as far as like anything Hollywood, I was really disappointed with Sati, because in the Revolution, she made such like a big deal, right? Like, this girl who can, you know, she made the rainbow and so forth, and it's like, oh, she's gonna have and Enter the Matrix, it's like, this girl's gonna have a role to play.
Yeah.
And then, like, you know, she just gives them instructions, but like, I don't know. I know she was like integral to the plot, but at the same time, I've never gotten enough Sati for my liking.
I agree 100%. And that was one of the stories. I mean, that could have been a character that you build on and have be one of your main plot points and characters for, a new trilogy.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And her part just felt so rushed. She came in and was like, we're going to do this. We're going to come in through this tunnel. We're going to get to Trinity. We're going to save her. And then you never saw her again. That was it. That was Sati.
Yeah. And I hope it wasn't because, like, I don't think it's this reason, but like, you know how they get like Priyanka Chopra, it's like, all right, we got 2 days with Priyanka. Let's shoot this. Go. I don't think that was the case, but it kind of, you know what I mean? Like
it felt like that. It felt for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Because especially, I mean, her scene's literally just by the well the whole time. So it's like, all right, we're just going to shoot all her stuff and we'll plug in everyone else.
Yeah. No, it felt like it was a one-day shoot even.
Yeah.
Like she came in, did her lines, did some VO, like, see ya.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. Any other sort of returning characters that you felt were done well or short-shrifted? There's, the Frenchman, Niobe, obviously Agent Smith, certainly Trinity.
Niobe, I love Niobe in the original movie. I kind of like the idea of having her here, like, still alive. It's kind of hard for me to buy, like, you have like an 80, 90-year-old general. Like, that part was a little hard to buy, but I do like it. I was like, she makes sense to somebody to be in charge. So that character to me felt true and real. I do like the interpretation of Morpheus being one of these like sentient, machines. But I needed more of it. It just felt rushed because at the beginning when he was with Jessica Henwick's character and he explained to her who he was, I was like, wait, but I thought he was an agent. But now he's Morpheus. So then, in a way that was good. They stayed ahead of me and I had to catch up to them. But then there wasn't enough of him. Like, I thought that was just like a really, really cool new interpretation of like, Morpheus can be anybody. Morpheus isn't just this one person. Morpheus is an idea. Morpheus is, it's not a human being. It could be a machine. Morpheus is a theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess I just needed more of him. He felt pedestrian after the introduction.
He did, and it's interesting. Like, for all intents and purposes, Neo's the one who coded him, right? And it's interesting how Neo's perception of Morpheus is like just this cool guy wearing suit. Like, he was ultra, because Morpheus was always cool, but it was almost like this Morpheus was self-aware of his coolness.
Yeah,
or he just
absolutely.
Just took it to that extreme. So it was kind of funny to see. I was surprised that they made no mention of Kid. He was, he was the first human that freed himself essentially, and that like never, played in beyond anything here. And certainly as far as like the architect and the Oracle being missing, I mean, I understood why, right? Like, it would have been great fan service, but story-wise, they're old programs. The Frenchman, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I was going to say the Oracle I was definitely expecting to see. Mm-hmm. The architect, and with the way you explained it, the difference between the architect and the analyst, that makes sense. But the Oracle, I thought, just because you have an infinite amount of Neos that in an infinite amount of Matrixes have, tried to accomplish the same thing, it was my understanding that there's also an Oracle that goes with each Neo and with each Matrix, just like kind of there's a Morpheus and a Trinity. So I was very surprised by them not including an Oracle in this one.
Well, I mean, she has a function to serve, which is to guide the one, right? And the one is ultimately a system of control, right? They need him for the system reboot. So with the new Matrix, you no longer need the path of the one, right? In fact, they don't want it. It's just a cycle of all this endless crap. So they purged all the programs. Whereas Sati this is why it could have been interesting, because she's that exile. She's like the program that survived not only initially, but now through this purge. And so in essence, like, not that I wanted her to be the Oracle, but like she could have represented that side of it. And in some sense, she did on a very basic level, but it could have been.
She guided them, but it was just,
Yeah. So that's how I kind of, and the Frenchman, yeah, I've just always been in love with the Frenchman, and I just I like the idea that he's just now that like there's this purge, like he's basically running for his life and his life is crap. But the one part when he got into like the franchise and sequels, I thought it was just a little bit too much for my taste.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
Especially because like I mean I don't. It almost like felt like they were trying to redo the chateau scene in some sense, like play homage to it.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't as iconic. Again, like just the action scenes in general just didn't live up. And so
they absolutely didn't. Yeah, it's again the only one that stands out to me was the first time the analysts slowed down time. So that was kind of cool. But other than that, it was just like any other movie out there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I did appreciate. I liked the opening. I thought that was good enough. It wasn't like it had that little Inception moment where they're running on the walls and things like that. And I think Inception just made it a little bit more believable than they did here. Here it made like, more CG than anything else. But at least like I was like, okay, this is cool. And then that was sort of it.
Yeah. No, I agree. It definitely felt CG. It felt rushed. It was the modern day fast paced cutting, and you could tell it was all like visual effects, green screen. Whereas the first movie, like really, I mean, they had like a hallway. They were like bouncing around like on wires and stuff. I was like, why don't we do that anymore?
Yeah, especially. I mean, it's proven that it works and it holds up. You can watch those first movies and like not really tell a difference because it's real. And so real holds up.
Absolutely.
What is as far as the new characters? Did you? I mean, I'm hard pressed to like remember most names apart from Bugs, which is Jessica's character.
Yeah, I like the new characters. Again, I think that they're a rehashing of the original characters, just kind of modernized for today's world. So for that purpose, they do work for me. But aside from maybe Bugs, who you have, a little bit of her story, they don't have any dimensionality to them. They're just there. And if you were a fan of the original movies, you're like, oh, you represent this person, you represent that. Like, they didn't give them anything to do besides be there and be fanboys and just kind of like, plug in the 2 or 3 lines that they have. It's more of that missed opportunity, in my opinion, to build on that world.
Yeah, because especially like going back to that first set piece, the way they're utilizing the hallway, right, the back doors. I was like, oh, cool. This is now like the rebels have control in some sense of these hallways and things like that. I was like, that's so exciting. And then it never really plays a part, really. I mean, it does because they go into the train with it, but like it's only used when it's convenient versus like just an actual like plot point. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in the original trilogy, I mean, it was like you understood what was happening at all times. They had to take the ship to broadcast frequencies, which they kind of mention here, but they don't really tell you why. And they had to like really find a point to enter. And they had to find a point to exit. And it was like, oh no, rush to the phone so you could get out. Otherwise, the agents are going to kill you. And this one felt a little more like, oh, you could just jump off of anywhere and we can unplug you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the hallways and the doors. I mean, it's just a throwback to the second movie, but not really going beyond that.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think? I mean, it's dividing audiences, right? So what do you think its legacy is going to be? Because in some sense, I mean, I was much like a kid, basically, when the second and third one came out, but that one felt divisive as well. But now I'm able to like process it a little bit differently. So I'm curious, like, will people revisit it? Will it hold up for people, or just, if they liked it, they liked it. If they did, they move on.
I think it largely depends on whether the franchise continues.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you saw this movie, like let's say if you're Gen Z or if you're somebody younger who is maybe aware that there was an original Matrix, but you haven't seen it or you don't care and you just went in and saw this movie, I think you hate it. I think that's what contributes to the like. I think the audience score on this movie is like pretty low. I think the IMDb review is like 5 point something, which is really bad. I think you hate that movie. I think if you're somebody like us who grew up with the original trilogy, if you're a millennial basically, or even Gen X, then I think this movie will be divisive. I think that it has a place in the lore, but I think there'll be more people who hated it than people who loved it. And I think that there'll be a majority of people who are like us who are like, well, I expected to hate it, but I liked it. I just wish that it had done more.
Yeah.
And I do think that if it continues in some form, whether that means like sequels or prequels, I think that'll determine how this movie is ultimately viewed, and whether people go back to it.
Yeah, and again, for me, I'm not opposed to revisiting The Matrix. Like, I mean, the whole notion, or however true the rumors were, of like Michael B. Jordan playing a young Morpheus, like that's a story there.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, it's not as grand as like stopping the machine war, but it's an interesting enough story. So yeah, I'm not opposed to going into this world, and I'm also not of the mindset like I think it's a compliment, if anything, that the Wachowskis created such an amazing world that people can build on that,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, it's weird. Like, I know that the movie is very much railing against this, but there's ways to create within it.
There are, and I think the movie's railing against it and kind of telling you, like, again, they forced us to do this because it was going to happen with or without us. We didn't think that it should be happening, yet here we are, and it also did make it feel like we don't want to do anymore. like this is it from us, and if anything comes in the future, we apologize. That's kind of what I felt like came from them creatively.
Yeah, that's a good way to sum it up. But
because I would be worried, like you, like I love that world, and I think there's plenty of room to explore, but I would be worried of some filmmaker coming in that's not the Wachowskis and going into that world.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would depend on the right one, right? Like, I mean, certainly, like, you look at Kevin Feige, and he's he didn't create Marvel or write any of the Marvel comics, but for better or worse, like, he really loves that world. Say what you will, like, there's something happening that's correct in that formula.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, like, it's been proven that people can, like, Neil Gaiman's Goliath short story, I think is a fantastic short story about, it's tangential to the Matrix. So I think there's ways to have people, to me, it's no different than like, a guest director coming in for TV shows. I think if you have like some sort of overall showrunner, but that's I guess the problem is, like, Warner Brothers just doesn't have a good track record. If you look at like the DCEU, for example.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that's why I'm worried, is because I think that if they were to go in that direction, what would come out would be pretty watered down. Okay. I don't think that, even though you have this big, rich world, I think that it would very much become like, let's make a summer blockbuster film, which that's what was so great about the first Matrix, is they didn't set out to make a summer blockbuster film, but it became a huge summer blockbuster film because of how good it was.
Yeah. Curious, did you did you know that there was a post-credit scene, and B, did you watch the post-credit scene?
Oh, that's a no and a no. I had no idea.
I didn't either. So
credit scene. Excuse me. Hold on.
You can, I mean, if you have HBO Max, you can check it out. I won't spoil it for you, but yeah, the first time I saw the movie, I had no idea there was a post-credit scene. So I walked out, like, once the credits kind of started, which I know is kind of shitty, especially since I work in this business, but I left. And then I look online, I'm like, there's a post-credit scene. I was like, wait, what? So,
oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. I just didn't expect that would be, because I thought that there was, like, there was a little, the closing scene.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be it.
It's definitely not an expected post-credit scene. I'll just put it that way.
Is it a Marvel-esque funny post-credit scene?
I think it makes fun of post-credit scenes in general.
Okay, that's exciting.
It's interesting. Like the post-credit scene itself has people just divided so much, right? Like some people are like all for it and find the humor. Others are like, no, I get the humor. I just hate it.
Got it.
But
it's not a vehicle to set up sequels.
I won't say. I mean, I don't. Okay. Here's the thing: you could interpret it like that it could be, but it couldn't. Like it's so interesting. I don't know. It's this movie in a lot of ways. It's almost like Don't Look Up, right? It's like a Rorschach test of where you're at in life. You know, so how you feel about things in your own world is what you're going to bring to the table. You know. Mm-hmm. And I think that certainly the movie, like when it's talking about like, no, it's, you know, the Matrix is all about action. No, it's about cool philosophy. Like everyone has their interpretation of what is the Matrix.
I did love that scene, by the way, with the video, that montage with the video game developers, where they were basically saying that they were rehashing it. You know, it's like, no, guys, it's gunfight. It's like, no, it's about this. Love that.
And so here's an ironic question: what is the Matrix for you? Not just, you know, just the all-encompassing entity.
The Matrix for me is it's the questions that we all ask ourselves, you know, the ones that we can't answer, like why are we here, where do we come from, and who are we? And this is the Matrix is, to me, has always been one interpretation of the reality that we experience every day, that tries to like give you an answer of like why you're here, who you are, like where do you come from, right? That's, to me, it's always been like this existential thing.
Yeah.
And it's just a cool, modern, action-packed way of giving you like an option.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's to me, I almost equate it to like there's this writer, Ryan Holiday, who's finding new and interesting ways to essentially write about Stoicism, which goes back to the Greeks, right? So he's not saying anything new ultimately, but he's modernizing it so people can appreciate it and apply it to their life. And there was this interview with Keanu where he was talking about like he saw a director friend and they had kids, and the girl's like, you know, what's the Matrix? She'd never seen it. She's like 5-6 years old or whatever. Maybe older, I don't know. But anyway, so he explains the Matrix about a guy like trying to figure out, you know, his world, whether it's real or not. And she's like, why would he care? And like, and I think that's also telling of where we're at. Like, and that's what this movie speaks to is like, yeah, people don't give a shit. They just want their own little world. And as long as they're happy in it, they're good.
But that's been the theme since, I mean, this girl like described literally the whole theme of like, do you want the blue pill or the red pill, right? And you know, like 8 billion people on the planet, whatever, 99.9% take the blue pill.
Yeah.
And then there's the rebels that are fighting for the truth.
Yeah. So
which you know, in so many ways is what's happening in, you know, society, politics, yada yada yada.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, it's again, talk about like the bastardization of work, you know, like there's that very famous thing going around now, like Elon Musk tweeted like, you know, take the red pill, and Ivanka Trump said taken, and then I believe it was Lily Wachowski said like, fuck you both. You know what I mean? Like so it's just interesting how like, again, the Rorschach test of it, like people just latch on to the Matrix and make it their own, regardless of if they understand what it's talking about versus not.
Yeah.
So, any final thoughts before we wrap out?
Want more Sati.
Yes. I think she's an amazing character that just gets so underutilized.
It made me very happy when as soon as I saw her, I was like, oh, that's going to be Sati. And it was. I was so happy.
Yeah. Awesome. Anything you want to plug as well for people?
I have nothing to plug, man.
All right.
I have nothing to plug, but you know, Pug Sports come out to play soccer Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Hollywood.
Yes, if you live in LA, come out and play.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. It was fun chatting with you. And for those watching, listening, I'm sure you have your own thoughts. So comment down below. And, if you agree, disagree, whatever it is, as long as you're civil, I'll be civil right back.